All right. Looks like we're rolling. We already have my boy Charlie here, who made some great comments on the Holy Land conflict discussion, and I'll probably put the invite out here in just a sec. Um, let's put it out right away because I don't have a ton to say, and I'm not going to be here for a super long time today because I got to get out Christmas lights, and it's a nice day in Minnesota in November, so we got to rock and roll. Dolly, my lady, Lynn, my lady. Good to see you guys here. So there's the link. I think my main takeaways from the Holy Land discussion, which I strongly encourage everyone to go check out if they have not, because it was awesome. Um, there's a few thoughts. So I was communicating with Nate and Shari, and it's gonna be 15 minutes. Charlie will be here in 50 minutes. Um, so I was communicating with Nate and Shari and some others this morning, and my main thoughts on it were Nate. One of the things that Nate said was he was so surprised that people were not pushing back on his Christian anarchism principles because he was taking such a uh, Israel is special stance, and that something God is doing something particular and special and different with Israel that would, I don't know, exclude them. Perhaps somehow Nate would say that from his, uh, regular nation building critiques and criticisms. Um, I don't know. So my basic thoughts on that, I would say, are I understand. To me, that's basically Jacob's criticism. I loved having Jacob in there. I thought a lot of I, I really do. I think love both Jacob and Chezi. Um, Chezi is much more my flavor personally and temperamentally because he's just not as combative and he's gracious and he's just such a lovely person. Jacob is also a very lovely person, but for my highly sensitive, emotional personality and combination of volatility, it's a struggle sometimes. But I do value very much Jacob and his perspectives. And to me, what Jacob is pushing back on a very uh ega he's basically pushing back because he sees on the exclusivity and the nation building of what he sees as Israel and Zionism because he has this very egalitarian universal perspective on the blessing of all nations. I mean, I think that's what I would say is what Jacob's pushing back on. And like I said to Nate and Sherry stuff this morning, I mean whether or not you think it's pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli or whatever, and everyone will say like the trite little phrase like I'm just pro people, I'm pro living, pro life, except not in the abortion thing. But it's easy to say that, but then the devil's in the details very often. And like listen, I don't follow a lot of politics. I don't listen to news, but in general, um, Israel's relationship with America and nation building and the military industrial complex and all that kind of stuff is just feels gross, feels dirty. That doesn't mean that I don't think Israel has a right to exist. Whether or not it has the right to exist as a modern nation state, I mean, the hell, I don't know. I don't really, I don't really like any of that. But here's where Eckhart? No, who said this? It's not Eckhart. This goes all the way back to Nicholas Okusa, I think. The coincidence of opposites goes back to him. He was coining that all reality is coincidence of opposites, these antinomies, these relational dynamics. And there are precursors to that, but he made that explicit comment. And I think that's true. And so in any position that we want to take in any identity, this is part of the whole Jordan Daniel Wood crystal logic stuff that I love so much and Maximus, is that you have to and it's very Taoist, right? You have to include the opposite, because it's not really an opposite. It's just the other relational pole that needs to exist in order for anything to happen. So I was watching recently. I should have put this in the well, I didn't know I was going to go there because I'm just always riffing. But I should have put this in the description. But I was watching. Somebody made a response to me on a recent fundamentalist podcast, the fundamentalist podcast on somebody made a comment, a response to me somewhere about a fundamentalist podcast on postmodernism, where they said that a lot of Rollins gets a lot of his ideas of Hegel from Todd McGowan. You follow all that? Nice, Gage. Good. Coincidence of opposites is awesome. And so there's a couple of I think there's at least 3, but I started watching these Todd McGowan lectures because he's a Hegel scholar, on what Hegel was really about, because most people find Hegel confusing, and apparently he is, because and Todd McGowan says that a lot of people, and I think Rollins would say that too, like he wasn't a great writer, so he didn't make his thoughts very clear to other people. And also, I mean, when I think you're talking about stuff that's super fundamental and probably what people should be talking about, if we're actually talking about the evolution of consciousness and the engagement of ideas and further up and further in, what you're talking, if you're really pushing the vanguard of that, what you're saying probably should be confusing to people. Because if it's not confusing to people, then you're just participating in the groupthink, and it's not the true knowledge that is pushing further out and further in kind of a spiral dynamics, integral theory kind of a way, which is what I think is happening. So Todd McGowan has these lectures on Hegel. I forget what the name of it is. I could probably go look them up, but I'll maybe try to put a comment about it in there. Except YouTube loves to take down my comments and say he said once I was posting some sort of offensive stuff, which broke their terms and services, which good Lord, I don't know what that was. But probably. So coincidence of opposites, Hegel, is Israel conflict. So pushing back, so all this is going back, backtracking, to my pushback to myself, because he was basically saying anytime you make a statement about something, let's say God, or any is statement, any statement of predication, in order to say that, you're including the opposite in there. Was it you, Phlebas? Was it you that reported me? You dirty mole. I'm just kidding. Charlie's here. Sweet. Hopefully your Wi-Fi is good, Charlie. You have crappy Wi-Fi. All right. I'll try to finish this thought about Hegel. Let me finish this thought about Hegel. So I'll try to be you being here to help me. So anytime you make a statement of predication, I'm having feedback from your mic
Okay. Let me try
somehow.
this again.
Are we good? Now that's better. Seems like.
On?
Yeah, I think that's good. So anytime you make a statement of predication, indirectly, implicitly, the opposite is included in that. So to say, like, I don't know, God is light or God is good. In order to understand what light is or good is, you have to know what dark is, and you have to know what evil is. It's automatically there. And so what he is basically implying, and what Hegel is getting at, is that and Rollins goes into this, is that essentially, like, what Rollins would eventually say, and he says this is Lacanian, is that the most fundamental thing then is the contradiction, is the unspoken, is the apophatic, is the opposite that is included in any positive statement about anything. And so where that pushes me in the Israel conflict, and in my anarchism, and in my anti-colonialism, anti-nation building thing, is that, and I think Tyler, my friend Tyler, was pushing me on this, and Michael from Grail Country has been pushing me on this. People always push me at this, is that I can become very, something I'm learning about myself and my identity is that I'm a bit of a, and forgive the grandiose term, but I'm a bit of a prophet. What I automatically do, and where I incline myself in any group is to see the shadow. Like that's just where I go automatically. I see the shadow of anybody that I'm in. But what I have to be very careful of is not then completely negating in an absolutizing way the positive aspects of it. So I'll say something like all institutions are inherently demonic. I think that's true, but God still works in institutions. I think nation building and colonialism is wrong, but God works in and throughout nation building and colonialism. So, and I think that's kind of what Nate was trying to say in the thing. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, if I could pop something into what, like, I would love you see your perspective. You are a prophet, Luke, as well. But the interesting thing I think about it is true that everything implies its opposite. Otherwise, it can't exist. There's something in that, in the sense that like it cannot exist. And I think why we always put an emphasis on God is uncreated as well.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, I was talking about this with Nate, and it's this idea about values. Values are not in the thing, because you can only judge a value by the result. And every result, if it exists, has to imply the opposite. And I think we see that with nation building very kind of easily. Like, if you see it, like, I don't know, like Britain. If Britain is a great country, it is a great country because Africa is a poor country, because they are like pillaging other states, or they're like subverting, or they're oppressing, or they're doing something like this. But at the end of the day as well, there is that is a place where the Magna Carta can come from. That's a place where the Declaration of Independence can come from. Like, goods can come out of it as well. And I was saying this to Nate in sort of this is where we are not in a place that can see that can actually see the value, because we can only see the result of it. It's like, when I wanted to quit smoking, I was like, if I quit smoking, it'll be good. In reality, it'll be equally good and bad for me. Because I'm in the world. Like, I do not know what doing something is actually going to create. Whereas I think God does. So, like,
we don't have the knowledge of the tree of good and evil.
We ate it. We have both. Yeah, right. So strange.
Keep going. I didn't mean to stop you.
No. That's okay. Like, it's interesting to apply this to Israel and Palestine, especially to Israel and Palestine right now. Because I think that's the thing that's always, like, that's the thing that's been very different, is like, there have always been Palestinian protests, but there have never been Palestinian protests after something like the October 7th. It's always been because of, there was like a ceasefire or a poor election, and then the bombing or whatever. And like, it was more nebulous. It wasn't as confrontational. And so people were definitely much more permitted to sort of, I don't know if the right word is, but go out and just declare their opinions. And it was a bit like, okay, yeah, you can. There's an event, you can comment on it. But because, I don't know, there's two polarizing events happened to people, two polarizing facts that nobody has been able to acknowledge or reconcile. And at least from what I can say, is like, there's the October 7th massacre, and then there's the Israeli response. And people are either paying attention to one or the other. And then that's where nobody can talk anymore. I don't know.
We could talk about the cat that showed up at my house, but I think people would not care as much.
You mean
they will on the fifth replay?
Does that relate to the conflict in the Holy Land?
Oh, just the point there is, I heard Charlie mention people are either paying attention to this or that. They're like, the things we pay attention to is, like, I love to take a step back. It's interesting that what people are paying attention to and why. And this it's a mediated reality. That's not an immediate reality. That cat showing up at my house was immediate. And for some reason, I guess what's happening you know, in the mediated reality, it seems relevant, right? It seems relevant to people. That's why they pay attention to it. I say they because I haven't really been paying attention to it. I have tried to connect with, like, I've said a few words to Chezi, and he's called Schlief on Discord. But he's the other guy that Chezi spoke with, who they kind of have different politics, and I enjoyed listening to them talk. So that's the extent. I haven't listened to the one that happened last night. What's the summary on that conversation that happened on
Well, it's really good. I don't know if Charlie watched the whole thing, but so it kind of happened in two parts. So it was Nate and Shari and Chezi, and they were just talking very broadly about the conflict. I mean, Chezi obviously talked a lot about
that
history
word
and
conflict. It's interesting you used the word conflict there.
Well, that's the way that they titled it.
That's the way they titled it.
And they were probably trying to do that to be neutral in as. I mean, this is the thing that Grail Country, you know, and of which I see myself as part of that body. You know, God bless them, us, it, because I don't know. I think having conversations, because this is the issue, right? That everybody wants to divide about right now, that everybody wants to be fired up about. This is like the culture war issue right now.
I gotta go, man. My phone died. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. See you, Charlie.
I wish we could have like a you know, some Arab, someone who's in Gaza too. You know,
totally, man, totally. And they were inviting that last night, and I saw in the comments. So anyhow, what it was about was Chezi was talking a lot about the conflict and the history and a lot of the arguments and polemics on both sides to the best of his ability that he could. Obviously, you know, if you want to think about this in a very Foucault way and everything is about power dynamics, Chezi is a Jew living in Israel. He has a perspective, you know, you'll say he's trying to swing everything to his side. I think Chezi does a very good job being very balanced and all that. And he brought up a lot of great points. And then Jacob came in at the tail end, and they kind of had a conversation after Jacob showed up about Zionism, nation building, because he and Chezi have different perspectives on that, you know? And so it kind of turned into that.
I want to build a nation.
But, huh?
I want to build a nation. I want to take part in the building of a nation.
Well, so yeah,
I don't know how far off topic that goes, but it seems like an interesting endeavor, you know.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean like a modern geopolitical nation state?
I mean that people who are close to God find each other and move off into like a place that's deserted, like a desert, and like transform it into a Garden of Eden and heal and teach and feed. Kind of like you try to create a technology that looks like Jesus, you know, a nation that looks like Jesus doing what Jesus would do, you know.
Yes. Well, that's kind of like an eschatological vision. I'll bring Chad in here. That I mean, I would fully agree with what you said, but I would say that is not in my anarchist criticisms of modern political nation states. That's not that. It's often purported to be that, and it turns out being Antichrist and the opposite of that.
Well, it's interesting because you get to think about, well, how should you do this nation thing with your anarchist approach, you know? And so, like, I like the idea of trying to get it right. Like, nobody's gotten it right. And I don't really have the power to try and help get it right. But it'd be nice if there was an opportunity for people like ourselves to try and get it right, you know?
Yeah. So there's Chad, you speak up, but there's some good comments too I want to get at too here. So
yeah, it just this makes me think of so there's I'll be on just for a second, and then I gotta probably hop off to talk to my boss. But there's so there's like little micro conflicts inside of Alcoholics Anonymous around procedure and things that have seemingly changed, and people say this shouldn't change and that shouldn't change, and I've gotten wrapped up in some of that in the past. But at the end of the day, if I'm really honest with myself, I'm like, yeah, but I haven't actually practiced all of the principles that are laid out before me. And like, meanwhile, I'm focusing on this other thing that we should be fixing and changing, and who has the authority and this and that. And even though I have all of like the propositional knowledge on like how things should be changed technically, and who technically should this and that and this and that, meanwhile, I'm not actually like, adhering to on a daily basis things like prayer and meditation and service to others. And so like I can be distracted by the big thing, the big 40,000 foot view, where while I'm dying on the vine, desperately hoping to make changes that that everybody is already engaging in. And everybody is like, a lot of this stuff moves and creeps so slow that that it's already in motion. And so I think of like some of the cats around the corner that talk about these people need to do this or these people need to do that, and yet they don't actually adhere to their own traditions, and they don't actually adhere to like any like I've heard over the past couple of years a certain person talk about, you need to submit, you need to submit, you need to submit, and then if you ask them, well, what have you submitted to, they will not state what that is. And
who's this
like
person?
I don't really
know
care.
Who you're talking about.
I'd rather not say it.
I'm just kidding.
To me, it doesn't like really matter, right? Whether they are or aren't in a particular whatever, but to stand up and speak and say you should.
Just imagine he's speaking to you and me, Luke. We are not submitting, even though we're telling people to submit.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's exactly, everyone.
This is a mirror statement, right? Exactly.
That's a great. I mean, giving people prescriptions is a hard thing, that's a very fundamental Jordan Peterson thing of like, take the log out of your own eye, because if you're wrong, right? If you're wrong about your prescriptions, which we probably are, and you're prescribing things to everybody else, like, you can create hell on earth or hell for other people. But if you're wrong and you supply it to yourself, then it's just affecting you, not everybody else. So most of us should probably be much more self-focused with these things. I don't know. I mean, this has been coming up a lot too. A lot of us, it's really easy in this YouTube land in the little corner to talk about all these thinky-talky ideas and all these things that are out there at arm's length. Chad, it's very hard to take the log out of your own eye and be faithful to the things that you're talking about in your own.
You can do it on YouTube. You can do it on YouTube where you get to not live stream and create this nice presentation and stand in front of a mic and have softball questions thrown up to you as you try to run for president, whatever.
Avatars, man. Yeah.
It's all mediated.
Dolly, what up? What up, my friend?
Hello. Welcome. How are you guys? You good?
Hi, Dolly.
Hello. When I heard like refeeding, planting, Garden of Eden, I was like, I'm coming on, because just before that you were speaking like of spiral dynamics and things like that, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna fall over. So creative, I love it. No, please don't say sorry. I love it when you like free flow like that. It's awesome. It's very inspiring.
Do you guys like my rings of my daughter that were just sitting on the table? So I throw them all on. Thank you. I'm like Harry Styles.
Shrink your fingers. You should totally shrink your fingers so that they fit.
Don't tell me what to do. You shrink your own fingers.
No. So I was at an online estuary meeting a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, or something, and this topic came up, that this whole conflict thing, and I was just like, oh my God, I want to rip my face off. I'm sick of this. Like I don't even like. To me, this is the problem of the not here, not now. This is a there, not now, or not here, and problem. Too much in a lot of ways for me, right? Because like, even though I have friends there, I trust God is working through them, and they're working on their own house. And meanwhile, I'm over here in this estuary meeting. We're all not in that house. Some of us have family there, but it's like, why are we being so consumed by something that is not here? And I mean, so like, this is what I mean when I say this trite platitude, be here, be now. Like, there's really something to that, like, because I can get distracted by your house from 15 years ago,
I can tell
or your house in 10 years.
I can try to tell a story I heard that might go up against Chad there. So at church, the pastor's like talking about the money that's being used, and it's doing undercover secret work, growing Christianity around the world. And they've got like 1,000 believers going into the conflict zone, and they've managed to get some of them even going into Gaza. And they showed up at a safe house, and everyone who was there ended up giving their life to Jesus. And the night before had seen a shining face that they followed to the safe house. So it's like, you know, on the one hand, there's here and now, and then I'm hearing a pastor saying this money that you're giving the church is actually causing people to find Jesus.
Yeah, but that's right. I mean, that's your money here and now,
right?
Being given to something that may grow something later. I'm not saying ignore the there and then. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, oftentimes, like, it's the log in your own eye deal. It's the same concept.
Yeah, that's always we all have to worry about that log.
Right.
But Chad, aren't you talking?
I was like, I left that meeting because I'm like, my wife needs help with her foot. I don't need to be sitting here talking about this bullshit. You know?
For sure.
Part of my language. No, sorry, Dolly. Go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. For some reason, I was gonna just interject. I was gonna ask you, but aren't you talking about like planting seeds or like sowing and harvest type of vibe? I don't know. Maybe I should just throw that in there.
Who's that directed toward?
Maybe just shifting a little bit away from the like log and splinting each other's eye. Like that doesn't seem like something that can open up like a new bed for growth, or I don't know. I'm just tossing it in here. What about sowing and reaping what you sow, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
All I wanted to do is put in some keywords to see what happens. I don't know.
Stir it up.
Throw out those catalysts. Play that archetypal feminine. Let's do it.
I like it because it's like, you know, like I want to complain about the farmers, but I don't want to farm. So it's the same thing. No, and sometimes you plant a tree, right? And then I think there's this great poem about somebody planting a tree, and then they come back years later, and there's a swing on the tree, and maybe they grew up with the tree, and like that's all part of the here and now and the seeds that you plant. I mean, there are things that this is why I think the principle of service is so powerful, because you never know where those seeds may crop up 10, 15 years later. Like I don't have children right now, and maybe I never will, but I am in service to men who are our fathers, and so I get to have an effect on those people, and thus people I will never meet. And that's all powerful stuff to me. That's a part of the sowing and reaping deal. All right, guys, I'm going to just listen now. But thank you. I love you guys. Have a good one.
Love you too.
Bye, lobster monkey.
Oh, he went. Okay.
I was going to.
Chad's got such a good heart.
Yeah. I was going to hop on the randos, and I was like, wait, before I do that, I need to see if anyone's streaming. And so that's why I'm here. I was like, I didn't want to.
Oh, man.
I didn't want to. I could stream this to randos right now, I think, but and I guess that's. Would you like me to do that, Luke? To stream this?
You can. You can if you totally want the streaming randos or the OG randos.
The streaming randos.
Yeah. I want to revivify the OG randos. I'd love to just have one-on-one conversations with people talking about their stories the way Paul does with his randos conversations. That's what that channel was for, and just people stopped doing it for whatever reason.
I've been loving testimonies.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's kind of what it was supposed to be.
That's a good idea.
Like that's what I've kind of been addicted. I hate to say addicted, but it's been the pull is to testimonies. I've found like 3 or 4 YouTube channels dedicated to testimonies.
Cool.
Yeah. The most universal stuff is the particular, man. It's not the ideas. It's the people and their testimonies. I mean, I agree. That's like one of my favorite. I remember Paul talked about this, but when Matthew McConaughey's like Green Lights book came out or whatever, he had an
I did that book. It's a mind-altering substance.
Is it?
He had an interview where he talked about writing, the process of writing the book, and he said he kept trying to make it, apply to more people and be universal and write it in a way where everybody would, resonate with it. And he just couldn't do it. And then so he just started writing just like his stories, his testimony, making it more particular. And he said, and he found when he did that, it actually became more universal. More people resonated with it when he made it more about like his just testimony and stories. And I'm like, that's because that's the way it works, man.
It seems like some people can like tell a good story though, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They're storytellers.
And
Absolutely.
then once you tell a story, is it embellished or is it just a really good storyteller,
Right.
I think, but there's definitely like, you can have a true story and a good storyteller can, make it more compelling, more captivating,
Yeah, for sure. There's so the sowing thing, what I would say about the sowing thing, Dolly, is and reaping is, when it comes to, I would propose that when we're talking about ideas like, and I mean, this isn't just ideas necessarily, but like the conflict in the Holy Land. But for us, maybe at least at this point in time in America, like me living in Minnesota, it doesn't directly affect me. So it's like this, it's like some sort of, I went to this comedy show recently. There can be so Ari Shaffir was in town and I took my wife to it, and it's funny. I don't know. I love some comedy. The opener sucked. All he did was like gross sexual jokes. The middle guy was awesome, and then Ari Shaffir was pretty good. But he talked about how he talked about a lot of things that were great, but he talked about Black Lives Matter and how like when that was happening, and it's still kind of happening, but everybody just like posted like a black square on their Instagram thing to like support Black Lives Matter, and he's just like, and he basically made the joke of like, what's the least consequential, least effort, like least significant thing that I can do to show some sort of like non-support. So he's like, what can I do for my toilet to show that I support Black Lives Matter? And like it's one of those things that can be well intentioned, but that's often what I feel like a lot of these conversations can be, is I think what he's pointing at, which is why the joke works, is that a lot of that stuff, although well intended, again, judging anyone's intentions is a complete waste of time, because who cares? But it can be egoic in the sense that it's just like, it's like when Jordan Peterson talks about recycling. Most people feel really good and they get a feeling of virtuousness from recycling, but like 90% of it in most places ends up in a landfill. Like it's not doing anything. We just feel good about it, and then we consume more. And what ends up happening statistically, they've done studies on this, more stuff ends up in the landfill because we're recycling.
Shout out Upcycle Club.
Yeah.
That's good one.
Yeah. So I don't know. Reaping and sowing, I think all you can do is speak what you think about things, sow, and then let go. Like Jordan Peterson says, say what you think and let go of the results. Stop trying to control things with your words.
Mm-hmm.
Your mouth is powerful. That which comes out of the mouth is that which defiles.
Yes.
It's but with what you're saying, something that came up for me was like the intention behind what you're doing. And you've got to check that, and you've got to check with your higher power, with God, and get that right before you're going to sow or do anything. Otherwise it can end up going in like all these weird ways that could backlash on you or other people. But I'm not saying that as if I know everything. It's just that's something that popped up for me now, instead of like before doing that, just checking your own intention inside of your heart, the condition of the soil inside. And would you sow outwards what you would sow inwards? That's different. That just pops in now. Interesting. I'm going to let my mind wander a little bit.
Well,
yeah, do it.
Ooh. Create a mosaic vision of some kind. Like just riff on like on the coincidence of opposites or something, throw in the Garden of Eden, maybe like, okay, a tree or something, whatever you want, but like different elements maybe to create like a garden for just your kids outside or something like that, or something that you would want, homey and sustainable, and feed, nurture, grow, generative, creative, fun.
I like what you're doing. I like what you're, I mean, I feel honored that you're trying to do the mosaic vision thing, but I also think that's good because that's how my mind works. I think your mind works that way too, because in all those things that you just threw out, I think that you see pre-verbally a unity to all that, and you're just trying to throw it out and let it, percolate like Mary J. Blige.
I don't fully see something like clearly, but I feel like if I throw it out there, what you can do, I'm interested to see that what comes from you after that.
So everything that you just said, what it makes me think about is gardening, husbandry, these interrelated biosyntheses that happened. It's like a forest with all these trees, and there are young trees, and there are big trees, and there are light spots, and there are dark spots, and there's a microbiome, and there are leaves that fall, and there's all of those things work together. And the best word that we have for it is like organically or harmoniously, in a way that allows it's not as if there is not intention from the oak tree when it drops acorns. Like it's trying to promulgate, it's trying to expand itself out, but it sows the seed and it lets it be. How that relates to everything else in a harmonious way, where like all those seeds don't become trees, or else it would choke out everything else, and it would become just oak trees, and it would kill everything else, and it would become Jordan Peterson started talking about this. It would become the autonomous self, or as I called it, the isolated autonomous individual. It would become this dead thing, because a person is a relationship with things that are and are not you. We are not this isolated thing. And so good gardening, good family raising, any legitimate body, I would say, including our own bodies and everything that constitutes that, and I'm not limiting that to the mere physical and material, constitutes a harmony with what, see, again, this is like that whole Hegelian predicate thing. This is my body. It also includes what it is not. It has to say this is the body, it's including everything else in the statement. And a garden, a forest, anything that is real and healthy is like that. And we need to engage this conflict like that.
Okay. You want to engage the conflict in a harmonious way. So, in other words, you want to take the conflict and somehow put it through a process in which it can eventually become sort of a peace, a harmonious sort of state of whatever it is.
Yes, and not a false peace. I think where people are.
What is false peace?
Well, I think we can often. I think through. I suppose I would say it's through deception, through some kind of lying to ourselves or others. We can pursue a false peace because we're uncomfortable with tension. And then we withdraw and we give up things that we probably ought not to give up in order to pursue this peace. There's this great Derek Webb has been this huge influence on me, although he's kind of a shit show now, I think. But at different points in his life, he had this lyric of he has a song called "I Repent," which is a wonderful song off of my favorite album of his, which is "I See Things Upside Down," which is a fantastic album. But he has a song that's called "I Repent," and he says, "I repent of trading peace for false unity."
Wow, that's strong.
And it's great. It's got a bunch of great lyrics, and that's what I'm talking about. Is that we can pursue Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth, man. We can pursue peace and have it not be peace.
Yeah. Sure, I love what you're saying. It's so, yeah, it's just revivifying my mind right now. You're awesome. I can't stay for too long.
Okay.
But I feel like I'm also talking too much, even though I just listened. Just threw a few words in.
I'm just hanging out.
Gavin, what's your word for today? What's your words of wisdom for today?
So my wife had a dream last night, and I made a video. I shared, and she told me her dream, and I was able to connect it to scripture, and it was a powerful moment. Like, we both had tears. But I asked her, I said, do we want to release it or keep it unlisted for the future or delete it? So, but the words that, the Bible, John chapter 15, I'd say those are the words for the day, verses 1 through 17, NIV here. I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And I could keep going. At the end of verse 17, it says, this is my command, love each other. But this part of the Bible was relevant for my wife and myself today. Seems very relevant. Like, we have to be able to integrate. I think I like what you said earlier, like considering God, the higher power, before we speak, for example. But trying to integrate with God it's a good thing. That seeking is a good thing if we can do that at each moment. And remember, we're not perfect, but we can try to get better.
Amen.
Oh, so good. Amen. Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna love and leave you two. I've got some homework to do, but you guys are amazing. Seriously, keep on going. Yeah.
Thank you for your positivity and for all your words. Good luck on your homework. Blessings on your homework. Let's say that.
Okay. Keep well, eh? Bye.
Yeah, bye. All right, let me roll through. There's some good comments happening here. Let's see. So this one about the Chariot Arcana is absolutely. Go back to the Meditations on the Tarot and the Chariot and listen to that episode. Fantastic. Anthony here is, I think this is totally right. Jacob's view seems to be the state of Israel is not the body. It's harmful to it. And Chezi sees it as a growing and perfect part of the body. And I think that they both might be right. This is the somewhat, it's the weeds growing up with the wheat.
It's all part of the plan, Luke.
I mean, in my weird, not deterministic view of reality of whatever is, it's obviously necessary because it's happening. Okay, false. So we have here false peace equals complacency. I think that's probably true. It's a denial. There's a great quote that's coming to mind. It's a denial of conscience. It's a Cormac quote. Let's go find it. Oh man, false peace is quiet. There's a Cormac quote. I'm gonna find it because anytime we have the chance to bring in Cormac, we should, because he's awesome. But he has a quote from All the Pretty Horses, which I think I have in here somewhere. Can I find it in a fast enough time that it's not annoying and dumb?
Do you know true peace, Luke? That's the question. It's the same thing we were talking about the other day. It's like, do you know true mental health? It's like, we could talk about these words, but it's hard to actually use words to communicate a state of being.
Dude, totally. Absolutely. Do I have true peace? Dude, no.
And then anything you communicate, like, even if you did, like, how would you be able to communicate it? Like, how would I even be able to know the peace that you know?
Well, you probably, what's interesting, right? If I had to say, so the quote, I'll try to remember the quote. I'll try to just paraphrase it, but it's something like, it's always, and someone can look it up if they want to, but it's something like this. It's always himself that the coward betrays first. After that, all other betrayals come easily. And I think that's what that means, is it's like a denial of conscience. That complacency. That's what complacency is to me. It's a denial of your own conscience for a false peace.
I was at a party one time and I was drinking a fake beer. So I had a beer can that I had water I was putting it in because I was a driver.
One of the ways you and I are different.
Well, it's just when I was just trying. Maybe I had a track meet the next day and I was in high school, but and I was in high school, and I was drinking my fake beer, and then a guy was mad at me and he came up and he slapped me in the face in front of like 50 people.
Holy cow!
And I was like, he said, "What you gonna do about it?" I said, "I don't want to fight you." He's like, "That's what I thought, pussy." And he went away. And the guy, the owner of the property came up, or he's the kid of the owner of the property, and he thanked me. But it's like, I was being from his perspective, I was being a coward, and maybe I was being a coward.
From his false perspective. But see, that's the thing. At the end of the day, that's not a. I don't know.
If I had to freeze move, that's what we have. That's our options.
There's some of that. Yeah, there's some of that. But I think we can also, through practice, we can train ourselves in those sorts of things where, and through ritual and practice, you can, that's the way that wiring works. Through subsidiary focal integration, you train new neural pathways in your brain that become your habits, which is who you are.
If I had been drinking, my inhibitions would have been lowered, and I know from experience,
Yeah.
So it's totally. Like these mind altering substances we're all in, including the books and the media, our mediated reality. It's shaping all of it.
Yeah, totally, for sure. That's
so
like
what
a
is
lot
peace?
of the
what is peace?
Well, so Charlie said true peace is silence, and I think to a large degree, one of the things I was going to say earlier is that if you look at a lot of the saints, at least from the Christian tradition, like even take someone like Thomas Aquinas at the end of his life, like what's the last thing that he said?
I don't know.
Like he essentially said, everything I've written, he's the great Thomist. All Thomism comes from Aquinas, and he's the great scholar of the Catholic Church, one of them, probably the greatest. And at the end of his life, he's like, this is all straw. It's all worthless. It's just chaff to be burned. So true peace is silence. Most saints at the end of their life, they don't have much to say. Or they really almost in a very sociological way probably let it be, which I don't know.
There's this move. So there's fight, flight, freeze, and then there's this one that I didn't say is called surrender. Right? It's when you surrender, it's like you're at peace when you surrender. Truly, if you truly surrender, whatever comes next, like
if you're no longer fighting anything or judging anything,
you're not afraid of it. You're not running from it. You're not fighting. It's a surrender.
I mean, what if you truly surrender? And this is something Shari will say a lot. What if you truly surrender to and make peace with your own death, which is what I think a lot of Christianity is about, and you actually don't have a fear of death? I mean, I think most of this stuff, most ego stuff, is a fight against death. But I think a lot of what Christianity is this inversion. I mean, we say this all the time in the Orthodox Church, trampling down death by death. What is the gateway to life? Death. It's a coincidence of opposites. It's a voluntarily giving up of your own life to those who would kill you, and that is life in this weird paradoxical way. That's the weird faith.
There's opposite worldviews too. That the fight, the warrior is you've got the warrior who goes to Valhalla,
Yes, well that's a little bit, who said this earlier? That's a little bit of an answer to Phlebas's question of what is the difference between, and I don't know, like what are the differences of how a Christian should respond to violence and how a Jewish person should respond? My opinion, a Christian responds to violence with not violence, not defending themselves, like Jesus. And I know a lot of Christians aren't going to like that. Like
what happens when they come in your house, Luke, with your family?
I know.
What you gonna do?
I know. What am I actually going to do? I don't know.
Here's
what would I prescribe?
I think what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to love the invader as I defend. Ideally, I hit a button and my robot comes out of the ceiling and wraps around their neck and then disarms them. Like that's
there you go.
And maybe my swarm, I can get, if 100 soldiers come in, I can just disarm all of them. Like that's what I want. nonviolent, like a non-lethal. When I try to propose this stuff to the United States Defense Department, they ignored me. But I was proposing this stuff 10 years ago. Nobody wants to do this stuff.
Well, and I mean, whether or not, I mean, that's just, there's no, like, I was just talking to my wife. This is the problem with capitalism and mammon, is there's no money in it. And like, there's no funding for scientific research that just is actually for the betterment of people that nobody can make money off of. So like recently, the last week, and I just bring this up as like a point of reference for what you're talking about, this is one of my big problems with government and systems in general, is they're used for things. But I've been on this essentially ketogenic kind of carnivore diet the last week thing. And it's interesting because I'm about to turn 41 and I feel fantastic. Like all my soreness, all my joint pain, back, like even sitting somewhere and getting back pain, and I have this recurrent neck pain thing, like everything is gone. Like I don't quite have like the energy and the spunk that I had in my 20s, but physically, like I feel very good.
You're ready to defend your home. You're ready to defend your home.
Well, I feel better than I felt in a really long time. And I was just talking to my wife about this, and I was just like, what if, and I don't know how to say his name right, but like I'm way behind in comments too, by the way. What if Hippocrates was right and it really was, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food? What if we could really cure? I mean, I don't know. Let's just this for the sake of argument.
My wife's been paying attention to all of the everybody has spirits in it. Everybody, and then so like institutions and governments. It's like, and FDA. You're going to trust the FDA? Yeah, you're that body. You're gonna like all of them.
Well,
like the medicine, the people who do journals. Like, are you going to trust them?
Right. Well, but this is to the point. This is to the point of the system thing. Is like, what if what would really make people healthy is gardening, canning their own food, exercising appropriately, getting sun, doing minor exercise things.
It's not like what if. It's actually the truth. Like this is how you get healthy.
And eating locally grown healthy food, because you can't even really, I mean, you can't commercialize this and ship like the same tomato that has the longest shelf life all over the country, but like heirloom foods, healthy meats, not industrialized food. What if eating that and exercising appropriately actually, and even this, like anxiety, not drinking all the time. What if anxiety, all these different things just go away if you eat well, or a huge percentage of them? There's no money in it.
Yeah.
There's no money in it.
Well, this is why we have to build a nation, Luke. I've been trying to recruit people to build a nation. It's why I got kicked out of the Bridges of Meaning. I was trying to build a nation. Nobody wants to build a nation.
No, I mean you probably got kicked out of the Bridges of Meaning because you pissed off Joey.
Well, right? I was trying to build a nation and I was ignoring Joey. So yes, it's both of those. But anyways, I want to build a nation. I want to do medicine right, and I want to get education right. I want to do elections right. I want to do Defense Department right and law enforcement right. I want to get it all right.
Right. You're saying nation, but this is my struggle, and I don't know. As an anarchist, or even like Rollins said this recently. There's some other term I'd never heard of. It's not anarcho-capitalist. It's an anarcho-syndicalist. Maybe that's what it is. Like that's probably the best way to describe me. It's like an anarchist socialist. It's like I think local bodies, democratically, local small bodies should agree in communities on things, and there shouldn't be some big power controlling centralized state thing. It will always be corrupt. It will always be corrupt. I don't know how it can't be. Anyhow, but somebody said so. Like, I fully agree with this. Pick and Choose just said this. If nations can't behave the way Christ taught us, then maybe nations shouldn't exist. Again, like I would say yes, but somehow, ironically too, this is a coincidence of opposites thing. God is still working through nations, and they do exist. So, like Shari was saying, we have to talk about what is.
So we could
live in this utopian land.
We could criticize churches too, though. Like churches are bodies, and they have corruption too, right?
Yes, that's
so when we get it right, we will have a church that has the least amount of corruption, which is a nation, right? Like it will behave in a way which a nation should behave, and it'll behave in a way that a church should behave, and it will have systems and organs and everything in it that'll behave the way a healthy body is supposed to behave.
If what? Sorry, I was distracted. Sorry. Say it again.
All that stuff you were talking about with a healthy body, like
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about your body, you got putting the right things in your body, you're moving your body the right ways. I would even add breathing right, inspired correctly. All of that, it applies to bodies of people, including churches and nations.
Yes.
And nobody's perfect, but we can try to have the least amount of corruption possible. But it takes cooperation, collaboration. It takes so for example, like at church, they have a list of gifts that would fit in their church. And I'm thinking, it's like, well, what if I have a gift that doesn't fit? Like, it's not in your list, right? It's like it means there's a corruption in the church. If I have a gift that God's given me that you can't fit into your church, or it's the same thing with a government or a nation or anything. Like, we got to learn how to integrate so that we're not disintegrated, right?
Yeah, totally. So I want to propose something, and then I might want to just cap this at an hour because I got to get going with my day. And I want to hear what you have to respond this, but can we get it?
Give them some attention.
Yeah. So what I've been thinking about recently, and this is stemming out of like a private conflict that I'm having and trying to figure out to a better degree what is my identity, because I am by nature someone, Tyler said this to me, I am by nature somebody that doesn't like closing off potentials and freedoms, but that's something that you kind of have to do in order to live in the world. Like, you can't be, I mean, I don't know, I guess, well, St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9, be all things to all people. But I don't think that means like not closing off potentialities, because like in order to become, let's say, a good mathematician, you can't be, I don't know, to some degree, Renaissance men did a lot of things, but you can't also become the world's best mathematician and become the world's best basketball player. You have to pick.
Jack of all, master of one.
Yeah, I mean, kind of something like that. And so in me trying to figure out my own identity, I've been thinking about like what is in the big weirdness of multiplicity that is me. What is the core of my identity? And as I move toward a vocation, like, what do I want that to be?
It's awesome to be moving toward a vocation in your 40s. So I want to put that out there. I'm kind of with you though too. Like, I'm ready to serve, and do I've got these gifts, I got these experience, I want to serve,
Yes.
And so Chad's talking about service, but in his mind, he might not know the way I should serve, and I might not know the way you should serve. But I believe there is a way. There is a way for us to serve.
Fully agree with you. And so I'm beginning to think, or I had this idea pop into my head the other day, and it's a weird thing to think, but if I had to think of the one commonality, one of the main commonalities of everybody that I've participated in my whole life, the one thing that I am is the contrarian, is the prophet. You put me in any group and I immediately align opposite of the majority. Like, that's just where I go, no matter where it is. Like, if everybody's really comfortable, I'm uncomfortable.
If I fully support you right now, will you start disagreeing with me?
Probably. Probably.
I could play that instrument though, which is Luke.
and I don't think that I'm doing that out of some kind of egoic false sense of identity. It's just something really core to who I am. I feel like I see the shadow. I've always been inclined to see the thing that everybody has decided not to see and try to bring it into the light. My name is Luke, which means bringer of light. That's what it means. That's what my name means.
Nice.
And so what I think we should do, in my anti-institutionalism, all institutions are inherently demonic, that I love to quote all the time, which is a direct verbatim from Tillich that I didn't even know when I quoted it.
It's full of spirits. It's full of spirits. You got clean spirits, holy spirits, unclean spirits.
Yeah. Yes. But what I think our institutions need to do, in my fight against institutions, but realizing that God works through institutions, I think what I would like to propose is that institutions institutionally include prophets whose whole purpose is to fight the machine within the institution the whole time.
Yeah,
But what institution does that? what institution? It would be like it's the Catholic Church and Luther, and they were just like, thank God for you. Good.
Yeah.
Amen.
So like the ideal decision-making body, I want to have like this. I want to have like a Christian warrior, and I want to have like a Christian saint. I want to have all these different people within a decision-making body. Some of them might actually, like the saints are probably the ones you want to listen to a lot, but there's going to be people who want to fight and defend and get in shape. Like, yeah, there's a place for you in a decision-making body for sure.
I mean, we usually don't know who the saints are until they're dead, until after we've killed them, though. That's the problem.
The saints will love your enemy. Like they will love everyone. And so you got to be careful about that if you're building a nation. So that's not why you want to have a decision-making head full of saints, but you better have one and you better respect them. You better have a few of them. But what you're talking about, being able to shine light on those who are in the shadows that aren't being represented. I mean, if you had enough representation, you might not have to do that. But in lieu of having, but yeah, it would make you a good representative if you're trying to know those people that are being ignored and trying to allow their voice to be heard. That's what I hear, a representative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you gotta have, and like Jacob was trying to do that. Like when he was, I don't know, many iterations back when he was forming his, what is it now? The fountains of blessing or whatever
comfort,
it is.
Comfort.
Fountains of comfort. Back when it was, what did Chad call it?
I don't know.
Whatever. Chad kept making that video of like, the establishment or whatever it was.
The
foundation, right? Back when he was doing that, like he had asked me to be involved in it, and I was just like, that's so weird that you. I mean, he wanted spouses involved, and my wife has no interest in any of this crap. But he and I was just like, why would you want someone involved who, like, I was like, Jacob, I'm an anarchist. Like my whole thing the whole time with this would be like, this is a dumb idea. I don't like it. I think it's bad. And he's like, but Jacob's been ahead of the game the whole time. What I've just come to Jacob planted the seed and it sprouted and it came forward in my own consciousness. And now I think it's a great idea because I'm not humble enough to just receive it.
Someone planted it in his mind too. It's been planted.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of seeds being spread, and you don't have to give everyone.
Planter.
Yeah, you don't have to receive credit for that.
All right. Well, let me see. Let's look through some comments, see if there's anything really that we just.
It's a good idea.
Like throw up on the screen.
That Jacob and I clicked with an idea about what he called distributed cognition, but I was calling something else, but it requires voices which are going to see the thing that you don't see and see into your blind spots.
Yes.
Yeah, and it requires you being someone who's looking out and saying, "Oh, that I'm doing this work. That person is going to do better than me." Right? Nobody does that either. Nobody says, "Who's going to replace me?" Nobody's serious about finding their replacement to have more influence than they do. Everybody's like trying to get their influence and hold it.
Yeah, and isn't that? I mean, that essentially though is like the feminine, the helpmeet, the tension that takes off the rough edges, the honing stone, the thing that brings in the conflict and the tension to allow you to evolve further up and further in. Like that's what the feminine is supposed to do.
We're disintegrated. We got to integrate all of this.
Yes. All right. Let's see. All right. Well, I think that's about. Just read through the live stream comments. They're good, and you can see them all. But
it'd be cool if they could be voted on, like the live stream comments. We could pop the biggest vote up. Anyway.
Yeah. That's not as good as my salience. That's not as good as my salience and picking out the ones I like the most.
Just random.
I try to pick out. I try to pick out the ones. No one talks about how the Quran ends. I don't know how it ends.
I only read the first half. I didn't read the second half.
I've read none of it.
I was seeking in all the places.
Yeah. So, well, Gavin, I do really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Luke.
That's enough of me as a follow-up conversation to this. I think Grail Country is planning on doing a follow-up that gets into a lot more of the practical, technical details, but I highly recommend the first one that was just done last night. I mean, it's really great, you know, and God bless this body.
We need someone to represent the Arabs there. Is anyone representing the Arabs?
So AS, who's it? AS is a commenter who I'm almost positive, A_S, who I'm almost positive is Islamic, is a Muslim.
We need an ambassador, like a representative, someone who loves the people they disagree with, someone who loves their enemy, maybe a saint. Let's get an Arab saint in here.
Nate, I know you're here. Somebody's here. I'm going to do a part 2. Yes. So AS is brilliant. And from every comment that I've seen, they're a very smart person, but they also seem to be wise and good, as far as I can tell, in my exposure to them. And so please be involved. Yeah, I would love Islamic people to be involved, because truly, like, that's one of the things that was brought up. If Islam is truly, if the spiritual reality, and again, it's not going to be, even if what is faithful to their scriptures and to their theology is conquest by whatever means necessary, conquest, so that Allah can be all in all, which is Christianity ought not to do conquest, I would argue, from their theology, by force and by deception. But if it is true that that is Islam, but there's someone that can speak to if that's true, if that's not true, if there can be some sort of like spiritual jihad, whatever, let's go. Show up. Please show up. I would love to hear their perspective, but I don't know anything about that. I can't.
We need the mind reading instrument to make sure everyone is being honest.
Well, yeah, and that goes to what Dolly was talking about, is with intention. Like, you don't judge other people's intentions, please. That would be my prescription. No one do that. Whether or not you can or should judge your own, that's maybe all you should do. Just tell the truth. Try to tell the truth as best you can.
The tech is coming, Luke, where we will be able to know if you're telling the truth.
Oh, come on. That's like Joe Rogan talks about that. I'm like, bullshit.
Dude, there was
I don't believe it.
I know you got to go, but there's a lady, you can look it up. She had an implant, and she was a stroke victim who now has an avatar speaking for her. And it's because she's able to train it, and it's going to get better and better. I've got a few clips on it if you're interested, but it's coming.
Okay, I'll try to be. I said bullshit. I should try to be open to that. I am theoretically open to it, but it's like we are infinite. So, like, whether you're consciously lying or not,
infinite potential. I have a limited attention span, but I like to think that I have a lot of potential.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know.
And we, like, with a lot of people, man, start collaborating, cooperating.
Here we go. Let's see. I don't judge by view through the neutered human lens.
Have you heard of this one?
No, you wizard.
He's the hermeneutics of suspicion.
And
he talks about Herman the dog, who trusted his humans until he got taken to the vet, and then every time he got in the vehicle ever since, he was suspicious.
Okay.
Hermeneutics.
Translating Griswold Grimm. Yes, I will. I will not take the mark of the beast. I've seen the videos.
Optional marks.
I've seen the videos.
Guys. Optional. This is how
I saw the propaganda. I saw the end times propaganda films when I was like an adolescent that gave me nightmares. So
this is the key. This is the key to all the religions. It's got to be optional. It has to be your choice. If it's forced on you, it's not good. Don't force it.
Spirit of narrative. I think that's very true. Neutrino, can I just confess to being deceptive and skip the mind reader? I hope so.
That's fine. You just can't be in the decision-making body, Neutrino. That's all.
Yeah.
You can be a hand. You can do some work.
All right. Peace to you all. Thank you for your participation and attention. Thanks, Gavin. Peace out.
Thank you, Luke. Bye-bye.
See you, bud.
See you.